Hey paddle pals, welcome to Paddle Tales, where we chat with top paddle pros worldwide. Today's episode features Lonnie Homenuk, head coach of the Paradragons USA, a powerhouse in dragon boat racing. Lonnie has been involved with dragon boating since 2023. Lonnie has been involved with dragon boating since 2003. He has paddled, coached, steered, organized, and led championship teams in every division of the dragon boat community. He was also the most recent coach for Team USA Paradragons, and they are gearing up for the IDBF World Championships in Germany in 2025. He's here today to share insights on their mission and how paddling is for everyone with the drive and desire to paddle. Don't forget that you can find us on Facebook at paddle.tales.usa or on Instagram via Paddle Tales for more information. Thanks for tuning in, and we appreciate your support. Join me in welcoming Lonnie to our podcast. Aloha.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. So Lonnie, that was a very generalized introduction. You started in 2003. How did you get started paddling?
It was largely through a Chamber of Commerce leadership program that I think operates around the country, and there were a couple of classmates in that particular year, graduating class, that had been to Toronto, seen a dragon boat race, and said, we could do this in Tampa and raise money. In this case, it was Moffitt Cancer Center, as well as Florida's first breast cancer team, the Pink Dragon Ladies. And from there, it just progressed to forming an organization, being part of that organization, creating world events in Tampa, and of course paddling with the Tampa Bay Dragon Boat Club. And since then, I paddle with others as well. But I don't paddle much. I steer mostly and coach. So that's how it's
Do you
progressed.
prefer steering? Ooh.
Oh, yes. Once I got into steering, I really enjoyed it because I think it's as a paddler, your job is to paddle. As a steer and working with the coaches and the drummers, it's a little more complicated and it's always different in that respect. So I do enjoy steering more than paddling. I don't paddle too much today, but a lot of it's moving boats around when I'm on the circuit, getting them into place. That's about the paddling I'll do.
So when you say getting them moved around in the circuit, are you referring to working with an organization to bring boats to a race festival?
Well, yeah, on the festival circuit, what we call the festival circuit. And of course, most people have started that way anyway. I think it's a grassroots of our sport to a large extent. It gets the most exposure, but you have the production companies who supply the boats, and then they contract out the people that actually work the events, whether they be starters or marshalling, steers, coaches, finish line people, all of that, and transportation people. So typically we go somewhere for a week and then move on to the next place. So that's a lot of travel. And we hauled boats as well. Sometimes we fly or drive, and other times they pay us to haul the boats as well.
Oh my goodness. That is a lot of movement.
Oh, yeah, it's fun.
It's a passion, I can see, right?
Yes. And the people that work the circuit, they do it out of passion as well. And I don't think that they get enough recognition. In some cases, I think they make better coaches than club crew coaches, for example, because they just operate under so many different conditions, so many different types of boats.
Thinking back to some of the regular events that I've attended, the different festivals in different locations, and you tend to see some of the same faces on the steering or at the marshalling or, on the start line. And they bring a certain presence that makes you feel very comfortable. They can manage teams that are brand new, only had a paddle in their hands once or twice, to teams that are sport throwing it down, fastest as can be. There's a lot of skill in being able to mediate that kind of a boat and how you manage them.
Well, and The production companies, they're really critical of steers because they don't want any accidents, any serious accidents. I mean, boats go over sometimes, but as coaches and steers, they have us practice rolling a boat. We did a number of rolls in Decatur, Alabama this year as practice for the coaches that were there for the week. And that's the way it should be, obviously, safety first.
Safety first is right. We were in a race in Baltimore this year and in the 2000, and our boat ended up getting swamped and we were underwater within maybe 3 minutes. And, our steersman was fantastic at keeping everyone calm and situated. But I imagine in the back of his head, he technically was reviewing all the things that he knew about how to keep the boat upright because we never rolled.
Sometimes the boat just rolls completely and somebody shifts weight is usually the cause, or there's a side wake of some sort and you have a rollover. And then you can have people trapped under the boat. As a steer, you got to go under that boat and make sure everybody's out of there. Nobody, because people have been hung up on things, when the boat rolls.
Sure. I've been on a boat also drumming, and somebody in the first 2 rows stood up to cheer how excited they were at winning this particular little piece. And I knew, as the drummer, one of the highest points on the boat, if I didn't go, the boat was going to go. So in I went, but it wasn't the worst by any means. It was more difficult to get back in the boat than it was to fall out of it. But it was a day. I will never forget that. We make a joke about it. Like we say, if you ever find yourself not in the boat, remember what we tell you. And we talk about it a lot. And some people aren't necessarily ready for that. So it's comforting to know that you guys practice that.
Yeah, and as you say, drummers are a little more vulnerable. We had a young drummer during a race in Dallas this year. The boats collided. It wasn't a head-on collision. It was kind of a scraping collision. And she ended up in the arms of the number 7 seat paddlers, I think, of the other boat.
Hello there.
I just brought her back to shore.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Oh my, that's interesting. I've never seen something like that, but we like to say rubbing is racing. Sometimes that's what you're going through as you're going around those 2K corners.
Yeah.
So, well, you've done a lot of racing. You've been on the road a lot. Do you have a favorite race or a favorite festival?
It's tough to come up with a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
There are some really well-run festivals. The first Can-Am race in Welland this year, it was so well run. I mean, everything was on time, and for the most part, everyone's obviously striving for that.
Mm-hmm. They say Welland is an incredible location to race at. I've not been, but people that have gone to the race this year were talking about how wonderful it was. It's encouraging. We'll put that on our bucket list for next year. So let's talk about the U.S. Paradragons. And Paradragons themselves is a different organization from Team USA. So how did you come to be involved with the Paradragons?
Well, after the last cycle of Team USA, we had developed a program whereby para-athletes could, be introduced to the sport, and then hopefully, if they liked it, continue to move along either with regular club crews or forming their own para club crew, there's only basically 2, maybe 3 in the U.S. right now. And so we needed a vehicle to do that on an ongoing basis, and that became Paradragons USA, which is totally different than Team USA, of course. But the difference with, in the Team USA programs, and they have a pool to draw from. We didn't have a pool to draw from. We had to go out and create somewhat of a pool with the first Team USA cycle. And we needed Paradragons USA to sort of continue that process and continue to develop it on an ongoing basis. And that's what we are trying to do. We've learned a lot along the way. Coaching para-athletes are different than coaching club crews, BCS, vets in that respect. And so the coaches particularly have to be able to learn how to coach a para-athlete and learn from those para-athletes as to what their needs are, what their ambitions are as well. It's been one of the most fulfilling as well as difficult aspects of my coaching career. The para-athlete, we have such a diverse range or bandwidth of what defines a para, more so than the International Olympic Committee does. And as a result, you have cognitive impairments and you have physical impairments. The physical impairments can generally be met. With physical impairments, we've got a design for a one-armed paddler, a paddle for a one-armed paddler. We have seats that strap in a double amputee above the knee with quick releases. So we work with people. The cognitive impairments, though, that's a much more challenging learning curve as a coach because it depends on the impairment. Do they have autism? Do they have cerebral palsy? Do they have PTSD? There's all kinds of rare diseases out there. I have people that, can't do push-ups because it'll crush their bones in their arms. And I have paddlers that, due to their impairment, they hate to lose. They do not like losing. And we had to learn how to adjust to that. And because we lost a lot of races too, going up against non-para teams. So PDUSA just gives us a stronger vehicle to operate from. And it'll continue. I'm hoping it continues until it's no longer needed, that there's enough para crews around that can, operate and it integrates into the dragon boat community just as BCS has, or as vets are the coming, that's going to happen sometime, or the plus 70. Those are all things that are coming, and we're hoping to be part of that.
So I've seen the Out of Sight Dragons, which are based in DC on the East Coast. And they have handlers that help them come down to the dock and they get on the boats. And it takes a little bit of time, but nothing extraordinary, nothing challenging that would, stop a festival. And I wonder how they get coached. But I was particularly intrigued by the ability of a deaf paddler to get on the boat and paddle. So is everybody on the boat able to sign in this respect?
No, not everybody signs. And it's only a small percentage of people that sign, but we have people that sign. It's exposing the non-paras to what the impairments are of the para paddlers, and so they can understand better. I mean, we've run into issues with a deaf steer at the Worlds, and the IDBF just didn't recognize it at the time that we had a deaf steer, and we've now learned ourselves to make sure that the starters know that we have a deaf steer on steering the boat. Because once they're in the boat, it's if something unusual happens and they need to understand what's going on. I mean, when you practice with deaf paddlers, they know what's happening, whether there's signing or not. But all our drummers have to know sign language or some version as it relates to dragon boating.
Sure. But, to make a signal or a sign or a hand motion that is equally effective is certainly something that I think takes incredible focus as a paddler to receive and an incredible focus for the drummer to put out there. And then for you as the steersman to be able to see it as far back as you are and understand what's being called for. It's pretty amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's a development in process. The other thing I wanted to mention is that with the blind, for example, yes, they have to be, and some of the other impairments require the paddler to be accompanied to the boat. And we call those people support paddlers or support people, and they are critical to our operations. And they are part of the program. They have to be part of the program. We couldn't operate without them.
So how does that work? Do the support paddlers get on the boat with them, and so many support paddlers are allowed for an adaptive boat, or do they
Yeah,
just help open the boat up? How many
there's
are you
two
allowed?
there's two divisions to paradragon racing. PD1, whether it's standard or small boats, PD1 is all paras, except the steer and drummer do not have to be. PD2 is 50-50.
Mm.
We had a crew, I think a total crew of about 40 some people, and
Wow.
then 11 staff that were there. And it was a big crew. I don't know if if we're selected, if we would do that quite the same. But the people that were there got to paddle a lot. They were they
Wow.
were worn out.
So, in looking back in some research for para athletes, it's clear that the Philippines have been doing this the longest. But how many nations participated in in Team USA, or I guess in the World IDBF competition in 2023 with para athlete crews?
Well, in Thailand, there were four that were there. There was ourselves,
Okay.
Canada, the Philippines, and India. I'm already hearing for the next cycle that there would hopefully be, I think, half a dozen or more.
Wow. Wow.
And
Hmm. Hmm. I saw that there's like a collective group of people, maybe 6 or 8 from different countries that are all kind of working together to help form this division and make the opportunity to paddle. If it were up to me, every person would have a paddle in their hands, right? But,
exactly.
so good for you. So how does one become a support person? Well, let's start at the athlete first. How does one become involved with para athletes? They just reach out to a local team, or do they have to contact you?
Well, hopefully they have to hear about the opportunity somewhere in the first place,
Hmm.
and they approach either a local team or they approach us. We have a program in partnership with Mad Dragon Foundation. We will work with Mad Dragon Foundation to supply boats, insurance, trailer,
Wow.
an introductory camp or something like that. Uh,
I'm not familiar with the Mad Dragon Foundation. Where are they located?
that's Mike Kirkman and company. Mike is one of those guys that's a visionary and certainly has played a huge role in the development of this sport in North America.
Hmm.
And he's not done yet. I know that. He still has some pretty big aspirations in terms of the sport. But this Mad Dragon Foundation, he set up as an aside because he sees the opportunity in helping to get the Paradragon division going.
Mm.
Um, I think he also applies that foundation to vets as well. And again, we
Mm.
need more to get the word out on these things because those are where, as I said, the development is going to take place. Similarly with youth, the future development of the sport, in my mind, is obviously with youth, but you tend to lose them after a period of time, and they
Hmm.
may or may not come back to it. When they start to get into their working years and so forth. Your veterans, there's a lot of vets, and I think the U.S. could have an amazing Team USA vet division when that division is actually brought into the IDBF. Canada is already working on that. They have a veterans director. And so, they're sort of seeing the curve head upwards. Uh,
If the IDBF World Championships are in Germany in 2025, we are a year at most, or less than a year out from having our teams getting to be developed, I guess. I know they haven't announced coaching yet for the Team USA divisions, but how will people get involved with the teams if they want more information? How can, if I am a paddler listening to this podcast and I think, I fall into this division, what do you have planned for me as an athlete going forward in the next couple months?
Well, with respect to the other divisions within Team USA, again, I go back to they already have a pool that they've had for years. And that pool, it has its ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
People try out, people leave after, a couple years of doing this, except people like Tommy who hung around for 27. And and all of that's fine. We don't, as paras, we don't have that pool still on any consistent basis. And so if people hear through this podcast, get in touch with pdusa.org and, we'll put you on lists. We've developed lists in conjunction with some of the existing club crew para teams, such as Adaptive Fusion or Out of Sight in DC.
There's a place on the east, there's more than one location. There's a place in the west, more than one location to get involved. When I was in Tempe in 2023, which is where I first met you, I saw that there was a para athlete camp to try and build up people's skills and see how the team would mesh together. And there were quite a few paddlers that I knew from being on the East Coast, and seeing paddlers from like the DC Dragons and from New Jersey teams. So if I wanted to be a support paddler in some way, what are your requirements for that?
Well, just initially the same thing, just contact us. We always welcome the support paddlers in our group. And there's also other support people that, pretty much have to travel with us at times, just because we need to have additional people as PDUSA, or we find locations such as Welland, such as Orlando, such as Puerto Rico that, hey, is anybody interested in, going to this race? And if we have enough people, we go. Puerto Rico last year, we did a camp for one day and we raced and we won, and it's small boat racing. But I only had 2 guys on that boat and 8 women. And I'll tell you, those women, they won everything. I think we were racing para and mixed, and they blew out, or open, and they blew out, I know, all men's team from somewhere, just blew them out of the water.
Wow.
The Puerto Rico camp, we're talking about, we're getting response. We know we'll do that. I think we'll expand the camp to 2 days and just continue on. So if there's opportunities, but once you get into a cycle year, then, the course of focus has to change somewhat. And that's what we have to adjust to on our own.
And so this year coming up is a cycle year for Team USA. So you'll adjust in what way? Or will you have limited handlers or paddlers or what?
No. I mean, we'll have limited camps and tryouts. One thing I would like to say is that we need the support of every other division. They need to supply us with some support paddlers as well. It's not to say that we didn't have great support paddlers, but Canada had premier men as their support paddlers. Philippines, they're all strong. India did the same. We had a couple of youth, and that was it. Nathan is a great coach, and we were able to get him to give us, provide us with, and we're not looking for the entire event, but I will go to every coach out there and say, you need to consider giving us 2, 3, 4 paddlers during the course of the event. They don't have to be for every race. They don't have to be all the same ones. Just, we want that. Or the people that don't make Team USA as well in those other divisions. But that gets a little bit iffy when you consider that most of the teams don't make their final cuts till, maybe a month out, 2 months at the most. I'm going to push hard for that, both from the USDBF to agree to that, as well as for the coaches to come on board with that. It's the only way we're going to medal. I don't care what anybody says. When I see what Canada and India do, then there's no way without the support of the other divisions.
So if I were a paddler, which I am, I've not ever, I've tried out for Team USA. I've not ever made the team. But if I were someone who was so inclined and Germany was my destination, which is a lovely destination, I would probably throw my hat into both attempts if I'm a senior B or a senior A or a premier or senior C and Paradragons to make sure that I'm going to get there if that's what I want to do. There's no experience like traveling into the IDBF and paddling. Actually competing for Team USA is a singular experience that many paddlers have not ever tried.
And that's it exactly. You can cross roster, so that's not an issue. We did have some senior C as well, of which one of them was Michael Yu, who's the USDBF Special Interest Committee para-chair. And we just need more, but it's a great opportunity to do so. If you don't think you're going to make senior A or B, then sign up with us. I mean, we will still judge you the same way as anybody else, para or non-para. You'll still have to go through the same testing, and you could be a part of our team.
So when you say you have to go through the same testing, what kind of testing are you talking about?
It's similar to the other divisions, OCs. Again, we have an arrangement, a little partnership with Makapo out of Newport Beach, and they have a device where a blind paddler can paddle, and it's controlled from land. They just get in the OC and paddle. So OC testing, some film of the person in the boat. Perhaps we might have an interview with their coach. So, yeah, we just go through normal testing for the most part. And then, of course, we'll have a couple of camps, 2 or 3 camps set up. Now, not entirely necessary for people to be at every camp, but certainly as coaches, you want to see how they do in the boat up close. So it's encouraged that they be there.
Absolutely.
10 years ago, I took a team to Ravenna that we earned the first gold medal ever by a blind team. Wow. That has, out of all those paddlers, 2 or 3 are maybe left.
Really? 10 years?
With para athletes, funding is a huge obstacle to overcome. We try and keep our camps as inexpensive as possible. We try to work with everybody we talk to. Well, can you give us a break on this, or can we do this and that? And the production companies are all supportive, and that helps in that regard. So that's a concern of mine going forward, is how do we sustain this in terms of that pool of paddlers we're trying to bring together. We need paras to be more involved in leadership. Right now, it's limited because the non-paras don't understand the needs at times. And so we need that. And I think that it's going to be a challenge, at least for the coming years, but it can be overcome. I mean, when you look at these athletes and what they can do and what they've overcome, then hell yeah, it can continue and become a viable, ongoing pool that is available.
Let's, if you don't mind, do you have a story you could tell us about your Paradragons? Can you tell us about something that you did on the water? We talk story here. This is Paddle Tales. So if you could share with me, an experience that was particularly important to you, that either grabbed your heart or made you feel victorious, what do you remember most about the last competition?
That one's easy, and it already sends shivers up and down my arms. So with our deaf steer, with Mary Wilson, um, there was some troubles, challenges she had steering the boat, uh, getting the boat into the baskets, and and then with the starter and so on and so forth. The first time she was very upset. Obviously, I mean, we were finishing fourth most of the time anyway, but she came back to the tent very upset. And as a coach, I had to make decisions, and people were coming to me and saying, we got to get somebody else steering.
Oh.
And I said no. I said no. We put her back in the boat, and we go again. Well, we put her back in the boat. She went again, and she had problems. But that being said, she had difficulty again coming down the course, and the Filipino team waited for her at the finish line. And when they escorted the boat back to the docks, and when we came by the grandstand, the crowd went crazy, went nuts. We docked, we got off, went back to the tent for our debrief. Again, Mary was upset. But then a group of Filipino paddlers came over, and they gave her their gold medal and thanked her for doing what she did. Um, that was such a defining moment for our team. And then I think the next race we went out and we set our best time, which was 217 in a 500, and we were wanting to be under 220, which we were close, but again, something energized the team, and went back out there and bang, 217 we got, and I think we placed third that race. So that's, to me, the memory that stands out.
A lovely
And I think the
story.
paras are a little tighter even in that regard.
Wow. So you'll have some camps eventually, and will those be in the 2024 year, or will they mostly start up in 2025? I'm just trying to form a calendar in my head.
Well, right now, as I said, we were looking at Orlando, but that's been canceled. So I don't think that we'll have anything in 2024. It's possible. If we're selected as Team USA, then there's a possibility we would before the end of the year. Otherwise, we have to set up on the east of the Mississippi and west of the Mississippi. We're looking potentially somewhere in the Midwest, again, taking into account the finances to get to wherever we're going.
Gotcha. Okay. I always say, I always ask, what do you see for the future of paddling overall?
Made a couple points on that. Let's start in the U.S. I think the USDBF needs an executive director. They need to pay somebody, whether it's part-time or full-time, at least try it out. Give it 2 years. Do a 2-year contract with somebody and see what can get accomplished. There's a lot of good people, been there a long time on the USDBF, but in my view, and I come from a very business background, that it could be more productive. And if we had an executive director, I think that would help pave the way. I think a lot of the other countries do, and they find ways. And the USDBF is in a position now that financially they're doing pretty well.
So right now, if I understand, we're a volunteer organization, and it's mostly all volunteers across the top of our organization. So you're thinking that we need a paid person to really pay attention to what our initiative should be?
Well, and to get things done. I mean, Canada's had Chloe forever, and she's on top of it. But that's her job, to be on top of it.
Okay.
So I think that's one thing I'd like to see happen. Still in the U.S. and, well, mostly in the U.S. is we've got to think about the production companies, because these people are getting older. They need a succession plan. They are the grassroots of developing the sport. and
Mm-hmm.
they're businesses, but and I know some of them are starting to give some thought to that. But somebody's got to start to take over, either buy their business or start their own
Mm-hmm.
business, uh, because that's at some point they're going to retire,
Yeah.
like hopefully all of us get to do. Um, so that's something that I think needs to be thought about. And the last thing is IDBF wants to be in the Olympics. I mean, there's been inroads made there. There's been demonstrations done. And I think that's well and good. I think it's a big challenge because of the size of teams. Although even if and that's one reason they brought in small boats a bit too, was to try and check that down a bit. But my personal opinion is go for the Paralympics first. Let's do it in the Paralympics. It's easier to get into them. And I don't know anything about the application process, so I may be totally off base. But I look at this and I say, okay, well, they're doing all this to get into the Olympics. I'll say the non-Paralympics. Wouldn't it be easier to take that route through the Paralympics? I think it might be. So that's my quick and dirty on that one. And and then the future, as I said earlier, is the youth, the paras, the 70 plus, and the vets.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure. I would really like. I come from a military family. I would really like to see a veterans team develop.
We would do
Yeah.
so well in the U.S. I mean, we've got
Mm-hmm.
so many veterans. And I think I counted it up, there's 6 vet teams, roughly 6 or 7 vet teams that are truly vet teams around. That's not enough. But they need leadership. They've got to have some leadership for somebody to carry that torch. And the para things, I mean, it's taken me 10 years to get to where we are with the
Mm-hmm.
paras. And I think we've got a good succession plan going forward, but it's a long-term workout.
Well, I think that there is not a short-term initiative here. I think that, you've looked at the big picture. It is extremely intriguing to see how it came. We came to be on the world stage at our first event, and here we are already moving towards the next event. Once we name our coaches, we'll be full steam ahead for this cycle, and then it'll continue. So I certainly am excited to see what the coaching staff looks like officially for Team USA Para, and then how you'll be a part of that, because I have no doubt in my mind that you'll be doing something, whether it's steering or something more important, or even maybe less important, but more involved, which we're excited to see for you. So I am so grateful to you for your time today and for sharing with us your insight and your expertise.
And I the same, again, just being able to offer the opportunity to speak on this subject. And I'm available 24/7 or anybody that wants to.